want to just do a quick video here talking about the Capstone project here and how we do the scoring on this. So this is for evaluators, and just so that there's a little bit more explanation and understanding of what's happening here. So as you get your score sheet, obviously put the student's name in there and project title. It should be the official title that's on their paper. And then, of course, your name and the graduating year, which in this case is 2021. And then I'm going to scroll down just a little bit here. Then project relevance, I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Again, this is, through your perspective, through your eyes as a professional, not as an academician. So go ahead and place what you think is going to be appropriate there. I don't think that takes too much explanation. The content quality is at a professional workmanship level. I recognize here this statement would imply that the students are already professionals. I'm not really trying to say that, but it needs to be kind of, the way I look at this is, would this be something that they would be able to stand up, and this paper would have the content and quality that could withstand scrutiny at a state level, or maybe even at a regional level, would it be something that would be, if it were published, would people be interested in reading it and find it credible? I guess that's kind of really what I'm talking about there. So again, the other two I think are fairly explanatory under demonstrates creative thinking and demonstrates quantitative and qualitative reasoning. The next section, project content, provides clearly detailed, again, there should be a timesheet in there, explanations of process and procedures that are used, appropriate surveying and mapping data collection methods, how we normally do it, so that should coincide with how you'd think it should be done. And then appropriate amount of involvement with the stakeholders. So the stakeholders can be things like, for example, if it's GPS on benchmarks, that's going to be something that would be, the stakeholder there is the NGS. So did they conform to the standards that NGS has set out for the GPS on benchmark standard? And then, each project will vary a little bit there depending on the stakeholders and who the advisors are, technical advisors and academic mentors and so on like that. So the other one, and then sound and appropriate implementation of surveying and mapping principles and practices. Again, that's something you should be able to clearly work with without too much explanation. Project conclusion provided identity of risks and or limitations in the assumptions, and then potential weakness in data collection and analysis if you saw some issues there. Clearly defined analysis, recommendations, or conclusions. So that needs to be stated. Every project should have some kind of analysis or recommendations or some comments at the end that refer to their work. I'm going to change this later, but for right now we're going to live with this, and that's where the presenter section here, which is what at this point many of you have already heard your presentations. So this is going to be, you'll also get a narrated version of the PowerPoint. So you should be able to get I will be sending you the PowerPoint, a narrated version of the PowerPoint. And so you can look at that as well as you were present at the presentations that have been made. So either way, and I can get the videos if you wanted to look at that and review it again. But this is what you can go through and mark. If you've already seen the presentation, then mark this section here. And it goes over onto 2 pages, so sorry about that. And then you've got this last one here, which is where most of the questions come in. And that is as they related to student outcomes. And the student outcomes, these are the ABET student outcomes that we're required to use. And so, we need to be getting more and more used to these outcomes and how to work with them. But this SO1, student outcome number 1, I broke it up into 3 different areas. They're identical to each other except for the 3 words. One is to identify, and then to formulate, and then the last one is to solve. So again, identify the broadly defined technical or scientific problems by applying knowledge of mathematics, science, and or technical topics to surveying and mapping. So kind of breaking it out a little bit more for you here. In this case, it's going to be identify. So broadly defined technical, we don't really do too much scientific necessarily. So mostly it's going to be technical. So define technical, and we're applying math and some science, but usually technical topics. So applying the knowledge of math and technical topics to surveying and mapping. So if you look at that then in its whole, you're going to identify these technical and problems by applying math and technical topics to surveying and mapping. So the next one is the exact same thing, only it's to formulate those things. And then you can see the other level of it would be to solve those technical problems by applying that math and technical topics to surveying and mapping. So that's what those three are. Those are probably the three most confusing ones. The others here: formulate or design a system, process, procedure, or program to meet desired needs. So again, a lot of times we don't design systems, but we oftentimes will design processes and procedures, or we're not necessarily going to be programming either. So typically that's what in our area that this applies to. Again, these are criteria that apply to across a broad spectrum of applied sciences. So they're trying to make it applicable for all. So for us in surveying and mapping, it's going to be probably more about formulating or designing a process or procedure. Number 3, develop and conduct experiments or test hypotheses. This is not always the case, but we often do conduct different kinds of experiments. And I noticed going through some of the presentations here this year, there were several that they actually conducted some experiments to test out different things, different hypotheses that were being used. Analyze and interpret the data. They need to be able to do that, and how well they did that. Using the scientific judgment to draw conclusions. So scientific method, in other words, hypothesis, test it, and then come back and revisit the hypothesis and make from after analysis and interpret that data to make that analysis and then draw conclusions from it. So which is number 3, use scientific judgment to draw conclusions. So those are fairly explanatory. Communicate effectively with a range of audiences. Now this is obviously, communication can happen in lots of different ways: verbal, nonverbal, and also in our case graphical. So any kind of drawing work or anything like these and other sorts of illustrations can all be, and maps and stuff are part of the communication to a range of audiences. Understand ethical and professional responsibilities. I think that goes without much explanation there. And understand the last one, the next one. Understand the impact of technical or scientific solutions in a global economic, environmental, and social context. So these are really the ones that apply. So trying to get the student to look outside of just where they are in their own little area, and usually somewhere in there, global, economic, environmental, or societal context can be on a regional basis as well. It doesn't have to all be global, but if parts of this are in there, then that's what they're looking at. So basically trying to take the project in its context outside of just the student in taking this one particular topic, but how does that apply to it in a broader sense? So those are the scoring that you need to do there. Use your best judgment on what you think is going to work well. Again, the only one that's presentation is just these here. Presentation and presenter and presentation have professional appearance and so on. And then the rest of it is all based on the paper. So that, I hope, will give you some direction on what to do. So what I'd like, as soon as you get the written paper from me and the PowerPoint and so on, I'll probably just end up sharing a drive with you. Those PowerPoints can be kind of large. And then if I can get it back from you on the 17th of May, that should take care of the timing for us, and we'll have everything we need. Thank you very much.